Part 12. Dallas moved to stand opposite Kane's head. Working with as much control as he could muster, he moved the light blade towards the creature. He had to be prepared to pull away fast and carefully if it reacted. A wrong move and he could sever Kane's head from his shoulders as easily as a bad report could cut a man's pension. The creature didn't move. Dallas touched the beam to the grey skin, moved it a millimetre or two downward until he was sure he was actually cutting flesh. The beam travelled effortlessly down the creature's back. Still, the subject of this preliminary biopsy did not move, nor did it show any sign of pain from the continuing cut. At the top of the wound, a yellowish fluid began to drip, flow down the smooth side. "Starting to bleed," Ash noted professionally. The liquid flowed onto the bedding next to Kane's head. A small wisp of what Dallas at first thought might be steam rose from the pallet. The dark gas was not familiar. The hissing noise that began to issue from the bedding was. He stopped, removed the blade, and stared at the sizzling spot. The hissing grew louder, deeper. He looked downward. The liquid had already eaten through the bedding and the metal medical platform. It was pooling and sizzling, a miniature hell near his feet as it began to eat into the deck. Metal bubbled steadily. Gas produced as a byproduct started to fill the infirmary. It seared Dallas's throat, reminding him of police control gas, which was only mildly painful but impossible to stomach. He panicked at the thought of what this stuff might be doing to his own lungs. Eyes filling with sharp tears, nose running, he tried frantically to close the wound by squeezing together the two sides of the cut with his hands. In the process, some of the still flowing liquid leaked onto his gloves. They began to smoke. As he staggered towards the corridor, he fought to pull them off before the tough material was eaten through and the liquid started on his skin. He threw them on the deck. The still active droplets fell from the gloves and commenced dissolving additional pits in the metal. Brett was looking mad and more than a little scared. "Shit! It's going to eat through the decks and out the hull!" He turned, ran for the nearest companionway. Dallas yanked an emergency lamp from its holding socket and followed the engineering tech, the others crowding close behind. The B-deck corridor below was lined with instruments and conduits. Brett was already searching the ceiling below the infirmary. The liquid still had several intervening levels of alloy to penetrate. Dallas turned the light on the roof, hunted, then held it steady. "There!" Above them, smoke began to appear. A smudge of yellow fluid appeared, metal sizzling around it. It oozed downward, formed a drop, and fell. It immediately began to bubble on the deck. Dallas and Brett watched helplessly as the tiny pool increased in size and ate its way through the bulkhead. "What's below us?" "Sea corridor," announced Parker. "Non-instrumentation." He and Ripley rushed for the next down companionway, while the others remained staring at the widening hole in the deck. "What can we put under it?" Ash was considering the problem with his usual detachment, though fully aware that in a few minutes the Nostromo might be hulled. That would mean sealing all compartments until the destruction could be repaired. And it could be worse. A large amount of critical hyperdrive circuitry ran through the main hull. If the liquid ruined it, it was quite possible that the resulting damage might be beyond the meager capability of the ship's engineering staff to repair. Much of that circuitry was integral to the ship's construction, and not designed to be worked on outside of a major zero-G shipyard. No one offered any suggestion as to what they might employ to catch the steady leak. Below, Parker and Ripley moved cautiously along the narrower, darker confines of C corridor. Their attention remained fixed to the ceiling. "Don't get under it," Parker warned. "If it can eat through deck alloy like that, I don't care to think what it could do to your pretty face." "Don't worry. I'll take good care of my pretty face. You watch out for your own." "Seems to be losing some activity." Dallas peered at the hole in the floor, hardly daring to hope. Brett and Ash stood opposite, crouching over the dark depression in the deck. Ash fished a stylus from one of his tunic pockets, probed the hole. The outer metal lining of the writing instrument bubbled weakly, looking like carbonated quicksilver. The bubbling stopped, petering out after barely marring the shiny surface. The science officer continued to poke at the hole. Instead of slipping through, the stylus met resistance. "It's not passing more than 3 centimeters in. The liquid stopped penetrating." Below, Parker glanced over at Ripley in the dim light. "You see anything?" They continued to scan the ceiling. Beneath their feet lay a small service crawlway, and beyond that, the Nostromo's primary hull. After that, there was only the atmosphere of an unknown planet. "Nothing," she finally replied. "Keep an eye out. I'm going to go see what's happening above." She turned, sprinted down the corridor towards the stairs. Her first sight was of the others all crouching over the hole in the deck. "What's going on? It hasn't come through yet." "I think it's lost steam." Ash knelt over the pitted metal. "Either the continuous reactions with the alloys have diluted its strength, or else it simply loses its caustic potential after a certain period of time. In any case, it no longer seems to be active." Ripley moved to check the still smoking hole in the deck for herself. "Could the alloy be stronger inside this deck than above? Maybe the stuff's corroding the deck horizontally now, looking for another weak place where it can eat downward." Ash shook his head. "I don't think so. From what little I remember about ship construction, the principal decks and hull of the Nostromo are all composed of the same material. No, I think it's reasonable to assume the fluid is no longer dangerous." He started to put his stylus back in his pocket, still holding it by the unmarred end. At the last moment, he thought better of the idea, continued to let it dangle loosely from one hand. Ripley noticed the hesitation, smirked at him. "If it's no longer dangerous, why not just put it back in your shirt? There's no need to act recklessly. Plenty of time after I've run tests and made certain the substance is truly no longer active. Just because it can't eat through deck alloy anymore doesn't mean it couldn't give you a hell of a burn." "What do you think the stuff is?" Dallas's gaze traveled from the tiny crater in the deck to the hole in the ceiling overhead. "I've never seen anything that could cut through hull alloy like that. Not with that kind of speed." "I've never seen anything like it myself," the science officer confessed. "Certainly highly refined varieties of molecular acid are tremendously powerful, but they generally will act only on certain specific materials. They have restricted general applications. On the other hand, this stuff appears to be a universal corrosive. We've already watched it demonstrate its ability to eat through several very different substances with equal faculty. Or indifference, if you prefer. Hull alloy, surgical gloves, the medical pallet, infirmary bedding. It went through all of them with equal ease." And that damned thing uses it for blood. One tough son of a bitch little monster. Brett spoke of the hand-shaped alien with respect, despite his feelings toward it. We don't know for a fact that it uses it for blood. Ash's mind was functioning overtime under the pressure of the situation. It might be a component of a separate circulatory system designed to lubricate the creature's insides, or it might comprise part of a protective inner layer, a sort of liquid defensive endolithium. It might be no more than the creature's counterpart of our own lymph fluid. Wonderful defensive mechanism, though, Dallas observed. You don't dare kill it. Not on board a sealed ship, anyway. Ripley made the interesting point quietly. That's so, Ash conceded. We could take Kane outside, where the creature's fluids couldn't damage the Nostromo, and try cutting it off. Except that we're fairly certain it's the only thing keeping him alive. Once we cut it off him, and got that tube out of his throat, we could feed him oxygen. Ripley pressed the thought. A thermal wrap would keep him warm. For that matter, we could set up an air tent with a ground seal. Let the liquid drip onto the ground below it. Not a bad idea, admitted Ash. Save for two things. Ripley waited impatiently. First, as we've already discussed, removing the creature forcibly might result in fatal interruption of life-sustaining action. The shock alone could kill Kane. Second, we have no guarantee that, upon being sufficiently injured, the creature might not react by spraying that liquid all over itself and everything else in sight. That would be a defensive reaction fully in keeping with the fluid's destructive and protective qualities. He paused long enough to let the image dominate everyone's mind. Even if whoever was doing the actual cutting could somehow escape serious injury from the flying liquid, I would not care to be the one responsible for what would be left of Kane's face or head. All right. Ripley sounded a bit resentful. So maybe it wasn't such a brilliant idea. What do you suggest instead? She jerked a thumb towards the infirmary above. Trying to haul him all the way back home with that thing sitting on his skull. I see no danger in that. Ash was unimpressed by her sarcasm. As long as his vital signs remain stable, I consider that a viable alternative. If they show signs of failing, naturally, we'll have to try something else. But at this time, I have to say that I think removing the creature forcibly presents greater potential for injury to Kane than it does improvement. A new face appeared at the top of the nearby companionway. Still no sign of the stuff. It stopped bleeding? Parker switched his gaze from the sullen Ripley to Dallas. Yeah, after it ate through 2 levels. He was still a bit stunned by the potency of the alien fluid. Ripley came to life, looked around. We're all down here. What about Kane? No one's watching him. Or the alien. There was a concerted rush for the stairs. Dallas was the first one back at the infirmary. A quick glance inside showed him that nothing had changed. Kane still lay as they'd left him, immobile on the platform, the alien secured to his face. Dallas was angry at himself. He'd acted like a damn kid. The liquid had demonstrated unexpected and dangerous properties, sure, but hardly enough to justify the total panic that had ensued. He should have first delegated 1 or 2 members of the crew to remain behind and keep an eye on the creature. Fortunately, nothing had changed during their absence. The thing hadn't moved, nor, from the looks of it, had Kane. From now on, regardless of any problem that might arise elsewhere, there would be someone assigned to the infirmary at all times. The situation was serious enough without offering the alien the opportunity to do things unobserved. Any of the acid get on him? Parker was at the portal, straining to see Kane. Dallas walked over and stood next to the platform. He inspected the exec's head carefully. I don't think so. He looks okay. The fluid ran down the outside of the creature without contacting his skin. Brett crowded into the doorway. Is it still dripping that crap? We've got some ceramics down in engineering supply that'll hold just about anything. I don't know about this stuff, but we can give it a try if we have to. I can jury-rig a container out of scraps. Don't bother, Dallas told him. It's stopped bleeding. Ash was examining the section cut by the laser knife. Healed over. No sign of the wound. Remarkable regenerative abilities. You'd never know it had been touched. There must be some way we can get it off. Lambert shivered. It makes me sick to see it resting there like that. That tube or whatever it is down his throat. You'd be a lot sicker if it was on you, Ripley taunted her. Lambert kept her distance. You're not being funny. I'll say it again, sir. I don't think it would be a good idea to try removing the creature. Ash wasn't looking at him. It didn't work out too well last time. Dallas glanced sharply at his science officer, then relaxed. As usual, Ash was only being objective. It wasn't in his nature to be sarcastic. So what do we do now? Lambert wanted to know. We do nothing, Dallas finally said. We can't do anything. We tried and, as Ash noted, it nearly cost us a hulled ship. So, we feed him back into the autodock and hope it can come up with a better idea. He touched a control. There was a soft hum as Kane's platform slid back into the machine. Dallas, through additional switches, was again provided with internal views of the comatose exec, plus related schematics and diagrams. They offered no new information and no solutions. Ash was correlating several readouts. His bodily functions continue normal, but there's some fresh indication of tissue degeneracy and breakdown. Then it is hurting him, Lambert said. Not necessarily. He's gone without food and water for some time. These readings might reflect a natural reduction in weight. There's no indication he's being drastically weakened, either by the creature or circumstances. Nevertheless, we want to keep him in the best condition possible. I'd better get some intravenous feeding started until I can determine for sure whether the alien's absorbing protein from his system. He activated a block of controls. New sounds echoed through the infirmary as the autodock began to efficiently assume the job of feeding the helpless Kane and processing the resultant waste products. What's that thing? Ripley was pointing at a portion of the slowly shifting internal scan. That stain on his lungs. I don't see any stain. Dallas studied the view. I think I see what she means. Increase magnification on the respiratory system, Ash. The science officer complied. Now the small blot that had caught Ripley's attention stood out clearly. A dark, irregular patch overlying Kane's chest cavity. It was completely opaque. We don't know that it's on his lungs. Ash fiddled with controls. It could just as readily be a scanner malfunction, or a radiation-damaged section of the scanner lens. Happens all the time. Try more power, Dallas demanded. Let's see if we can't improve the resolution. Ash adjusted instrumentation, but despite his best efforts, the dark blot remained just that, an unresolved splotch of blackness. I can't raise the intensity any further or he'll begin to suffer radiation damage. I know. Dallas stared at the enigmatic blot. If we lose scanning capability now, we won't know what the hell's happening inside him. I'll handle it, sir, the science officer assured him. I think I can clean up the lens. It's just a question of some slight repolishing. But that will leave us blind. Ash looked apologetic. I can't remove the blot without dismantling the scanner. Skip it then, as long as it doesn't grow to the point where it obscures our vision. As you wish, sir. Ash turned back to his readouts. Brett looked confused, sounded frustrated. What happens now, huh? We just sit and wait? No, Dallas responded, remembering that he had a ship to run in addition to caring for Kane. We sit and wait. You two go back to work.